You're being influenced by invisible currents that prefer you remain unaware. Behind daily distractions, endless entertainment, and carefully filtered information lies a profound truth. Social, economic, and political structures are invested in maintaining your current state disconnected, distracted, and spiritually dormant. These systems understand that your spiritual awakening threatens their quiet control. They recognize that the more you question reality, the harder you become to influence. Thus, they invest heavily not just in controlling media and production, but in shaping your perceptions about yourself and the world. The knowledge of your true divine potential remains their most closely guarded secret. They fear your self-discovery because it would collapse the power hierarchies maintained for generations. The real struggle isn't merely political or economic, it's spiritual. With you at its center, there exists a silent, deeply embedded belief underlying nearly all human thoughts, actions, and choices. The concept of a central, continuous solid self as someone who experiences life. This belief, so natural and rarely questioned, forms the foundation upon which dreams, fears, achievements, pains, desires, and failures are constructed. But what if this were an illusion? What if this self was merely a thought, a narrative, an empty reflection repeated mindlessly over years? The mind recoils from this possibility as it would from death itself. Because if the self doesn't exist, what remains? What's left when all identifications, name, history, social role, memories, hopes are revealed as passing clouds? This isn't abstract philosophy or theoretical spirituality. This is immediate, direct, visceral, the deconstruction of what underlies all personal experience. Throughout history, spiritual traditions and esoteric systems have indicated this direction, often veiled in symbols and buried in rituals. Yet some teachings dare speak plainly. The self isn't real. This statement becomes our journey's beginning, not a proposition to accept or reject, but an invitation to investigate. The inner voice that believes itself. Someone is merely a thought that learned repetition. The child who first perceived. The world didn't know this construction was taught, named, reinforced, and now governs life. Yet something remains before all this learning. A presence requiring no name, a consciousness that simply is. The journey begins in this questioning abyss, not with promises of enlightenment or ego enhancement techniques, but with revelation. The person you believe yourself to be never existed as reality. Suffering, attachments, fears, all orbit this false identity. Modern spiritual seeking often devolves into collecting concepts, repeating pleasant phrases, or accumulating experiences. None touch the essential. The proposal is radical. Abandon everything, not through denial but through recognition. The false must dissolve for the real to emerge. The path invites observation, questioning, looking inward without flinching. When asking, "Who am I?" you seek not an answer but the end of all answers. What we truly are cannot be spoken, only lived. This journey has no heroes, gurus, or miracles, only the deconstruction of humanity's greatest myth, the myth of self. The lens turns toward emptiness, and from that void echoes a question. If you're not who you think you are, then who are you? Identity begins with a name, a sound attributed to a body, repeated until it becomes synonymous with existence. With the name comes story, praise, criticism, achievements, failures. Gradually emerges the most convincing illusion. I am this. Identity forms not from essence but from the world's reactions to name, appearance, performance. This construction integrates so completely that its validity rarely faces questioning. Here lies the great deception. The personal self is a collage of experiences, memories, and beliefs, not a real entity. This entity, so cherished and protected, is merely a mental process, a sensation of continuity between thoughts, an illusory thread connecting past to present and projecting future. This self originates all human suffering, not because it suffers, but because it is suffering itself. It manifests as rejection fear, control anxiety, attachment to, self-image. Everything revolves around this notion of someone needing preservation at all costs. The personal self resembles a broken finger. Everything it touches hurts. Not because life inherently brings pain, but because experience filters through an artificial identity reacting to everything as threat. This pain isn't existence's flaw, but the inevitable consequence of perceiving through distortion. From childhood, we learn we must become someone defined by external standards. Success, appearance, intelligence, behavior. No one encourages discovering who we are beneath these layers. Identity becomes a comfortable prison decorated with goals, memories, narratives. Yet one unexpected event, loss, failure, existential crisis, can shake this construction. What remains when it crumbles? What survives when everything believed to be me reveals itself as temporary? The personal self serves as reference point, yet remains unfixed, changing with mood, age, circumstances. Still, we treat it as solid. The contradiction stands clear. If what we call self constantly changes, how can it be real? And if unreal, why invest such energy defending, promoting, protecting it? Here, provocation becomes investigation. Rather than improving the self as self-help suggests, examine whether it actually exists, not theoretically, but through direct observation. Who suffers? Who thinks, feels, reacts? Does a fixed entity exist behind these processes, or merely perception flows without author? Most build their dwelling within the personal self-concept. This guarantees suffering, because this house lacks foundation, constructed of fleeting thoughts and shifting feelings. Any change brings collapse. Yet instead of abandoning this fragile structure, they reinforce it with more beliefs, memories, narratives, perpetuating the cycle. The great deception isn't suffering's existence, but the notion of someone suffering. There are sensations, thoughts, experiences, but mind constructs an owner, a central experiencer. This owner, this center forms the illusory self. While treated as real, pain continuously recycles. The path proposed isn't denying emotions, but recognizing they lack a fixed self to which they belong. When the self reveals itself as idea sustained through repetition, transformation begins. Energy previously protecting identity dissolves, creating space where silence emerges and openness requiring no definition, defense, or explanation. It simply is. The great lie becomes great opportunity. Unmasking falsehood reveals truth. And truth resists naming or possession. It doesn't suffer, desire, or fear. It observes, witnesses, exists. A question hovers in silence. Who am I? Not philosophical inquiry or existential curiosity, but a blade cutting all assumptions. This simple, direct question shakes everything believed real. It seeks no answers, it destroys them all. Self-inquiry isn't intellectual method. It's not better thinking or mental organization. It's turning inward with radical intensity to examine what you assume is I, not adding information but stripping completely bare, removing each layer until only the ineffable remains. When asking, who am I, the immediate impulse brings referential answers, name, profession, life story, emotions, thoughts, yet none withstand the scrutiny of the question itself. Names are given. Professions change. Emotions fluctuate. Thoughts pass. What remains unchanging? What persists when all else disappears? This questioning, when sincere, creates profound discomfort. The mind resists, escapes, offers formulas, suggests distractions. It fears exposure because deep down mind knows there's no one behind it, that it comprises automatic, conditioned, impersonal processes. Inner rebellion begins in daring to doubt the mind. Self-investigation mirrors eternity, recognizing itself, not showing forms, but revealing their absence. Looking within courageously reveals not a person, but the space where all people, thoughts, sensations appear and vanish. That space, silent, impersonal, infinite. Here the process threatens ego, which realizes life lacks a controller. Life happens, witnessed by nameless, faceless, historyless consciousness. This doesn't eliminate functional individuality, but collapses the illusion of a self, needing to control, plan, defend. The heresy opposes not religion, but the greatest dogma, separate self-existence. It denies the protagonist in one's own narrative, shocking, because personality structure depends on believing a conscious center exists behind each thought. The question stands direct. Does an entity inside the body deserve calling I? This question needs no verbal answer but impact experience. Self-inquiry wages silent war against illusion on internal battlegrounds. It demands total honesty, genuine desire to see truth even when that truth destroys everything deemed important. Ultimately, whatever can be destroyed wasn't essential. Investigating the I that thinks, feels, suffers, seeks, reveals its unlocatability. Formless, placeless neither in body nor mind nor emotions, not a thing at all. This realization transforms. Suffering loses support without a central sufferer. Only life flows without identity's weight. The mind resists, warning danger or madness. Yet the question persists. Who speaks these warnings? This question becomes dismantling tool. With each thought, emotion, fear, doubt arising, apply the same inquiry. Who experiences this? Following this thread unravels everything, revealing no owner, only appearances in consciousness. This practice brings discomfort, demanding direct confrontation with everything, repressed, denied, or concealed by self-narrative. Yet liberation follows, revealing peace comes not from controlling mind, but seeing you aren't mind. Freedom isn't emotional power, but refusing definition by emotions. Self-inquiry illuminates a perpetually darkened room. Initially, ego's vision pains. Eventually, confusion clarifies. Something dissolves, not through rejection, but through recognizing illusion. What remains is silent space, formless knowing, nameless presence. This presence defies teaching or description, but once recognized, remains unforgotten. Inner rebellion represents supreme spiritual courage, not believing something new, but questioning everything previously believed. Letting falsehood fall allows reality to shine. In that light, questions cease because the questioner vanishes. When "who am I" penetrates beyond mental answers, words fail. Thoughts offer nothing, feelings explain nothing. The mind loses ground. Silence approaches, not absence of noise but living. Dense presence preceding description. Not silence between thoughts but space allowing thoughts to appear. Everything's foundation, untouchable by anything. Silence beyond silence, here ego illusion begins dissolving. This process concludes not in eloquent words or profound reflections, but in silence. Not chosen silence, but invasive silence. You don't decide, it claims everything. When mind empties, body quiets. Even seeking impulse disappears, revelation occurs. A peace never created but always present. Concealed by mental noise and emotional tension, in this silence urgency loses meaning. Personal conflicts, spiritual desires, existential doubts appear as passing movements unable to touch what truly is. No longer I reaching for something, only pure presence. This presence makes no effort, seeks no answers, desires no understanding. It simply is. Here even "who am I" loses value because the questioner vanishes. The one feeling, separate, confused, lost, disappears like morning mist. What remains isn't new identity, but absence of any identity. Recognition that being and existing never separated. Silence's invasion brings no extraordinary experience by common standards, no lights, visions, mystical sensations. The extraordinary lies in radical simplicity revealed. Nothing needs addition. The unnecessary departs. Mind surrenders, recognizing inability to capture the eternal, finally quieting. In this silence, consciousness recognizes itself without mirror, thought, or effort, not anywhere but everywhere, not thing nor place nor subject but absolute background of all experience. No longer observer and observed separation, everything, expressing indivisible reality. This state resists forcing. Any attempt comes from mind which cannot arrive. The instruction: abandon everything, including desire to reach, including the notion of someone doing this. When seeker disappears, silence reveals itself as ever-present being. This experience, named variously across traditions, Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, pure being, indicates identical silence. A silence beyond understanding with no experiencer, only experiencing. Here ego fears complete dissolution. Silence represents its death. So it fights, generating thoughts, memories, justifications. The attentive practitioner remains uncaptured, seeing movement without identification, perceiving resistance without reaction, allowing everything while remaining as observer. This silence isn't passivity but vitality, life without narrative, presence without history. The labeling mind struggles with this state, attempting reconstruction, but attention anchored in silence renders these attempts futile. Ego cannot sustain where belief vanishes. Remain quiet, so quiet you don't know you're quiet. A state beyond vigilance, analysis, identity, where even quiet disappears. Silence becomes natural. Body moves, speech arises, thoughts appear without identification. The root severs. This recognition culminates self-inquiry, reached not through effort but emptying. When everything releases, when nothing remains to maintain, real being reveals itself as birthless, deathless, nameless being recognized in each breath, each glance, each moment of pure presence. The journey dissolves. No path, no destination, only what always was. Silence more intimate than breath. closer than thought, more present than sensation. This silence answers beyond questions. In this silence, the world rests. A persistent image haunts human mind. Spiritual freedom as arduous conquest, demanding renunciation, trials overcoming. Truth confronts this narrative with unsettling simplicity. True freedom requires not effort but detachment, not moralistic, forced detachment but natural disappearance following truth recognition. When self dissolves, everything dependent follows. Attachments and fears need psychological center, someone to carry them. Without center, fears find no return address. Attachments find no one to seduce. This suffering, desiring, fearing, someone never existed as fixed reality, merely repeated reflection within mind. Honestly investigated, it disintegrates. The process involves not fighting desires or repressing emotions. It proposes not rejecting human experience but seeing its impermanence. So clearly it cannot enslave. Fear of loss, desire for possession, control anxiety. All movements assume something needs protection. When this foundation collapses, the structure falls. Why maintain attachments? This simple, direct question exposes fragile logic beneath emotional compulsions. We preserve attachments believing they define identity. Without likes, fears, traumas, desires, we fear nothing remains. Another ego illusion. True identity doesn't depend on contents but provides space where contents arise and dissolve. Recognizing this space transforms internal phenomena. Thoughts arise, emotions come and go. Sensations appear without owner. They find no one to react, claim, justify, losing power. Fear escapes fear. Desire eludes following. Attachment evades cultivation. Everything moves freely without imprisonment. This freedom requires no external change. Life continues imperfectly, fluctuating. The relationship transforms. Previously, everything interpreted through self-filter. My pain, my story, my problem. Now everything simply seen. This seeing heals inherently. This point represents silent collapse, no fireworks, no dramatic revelations, just natural disappearance of falsehood. The world remains unchanged while perception purifies. Events lose personal quality. Conflicts find infertile ground. Duality's game loses appeal. Simple peace emerges, mind baffling. The metaphor clarifies. Everything arising within you visits temporarily, never residing permanently. Emotions, memories, traumas, joys come and go while you remain. You aren't movement but space. This space needs no control, resistance, defense. It observes. In observing, everything dissolves. Here detachment isn't cultivated virtue but truth's side effect. Seeing no one exists to hold on, letting go happens naturally. Realizing self as mere idea, fears surrounding. It lose meaning, not through defeat but through lack of foundation. Many retreat at this point. Total detachment differs from imagination. Not coldness or indifference, but surrender. Absolute surrender to what is without resistance. Manipulation attempts, control efforts. This simplicity confounds mind. Remain in pure existence feeling I am. This sweet formless intuition. This state lacks history, character, plans, pure being. Remaining requires no practice but absence of practice. Non-doing, non-trying, allowing everything as is. When total detachment occurs, even detachment sense disappears. No effort remains, no personal recognition. Only being persists, so vast nothing adds to or subtracts from it. True freedom, needing to be nothing, prove nothing, maintain nothing. In silence emerging from ego disappearance, existence's beauty reveals. Itself, beauty requiring no justification or embellishment. It shines not through effort but through being. In this light everything dissolves, detaches, departs. What remains defies naming. For centuries, truth seekers pursued unreachable horizons. Paths walked, scriptures studied, masters followed, techniques refined, always assuming something needs. Conquering, special state attaining, final point where everything makes sense. But what if this premise errs? What if truth isn't journey's end but journey idea abandonment? Truth exists here now, always has. Unmoving, unhidden, unchanging. Attention changes, looking distantly toward future, toward expectations. Spiritualized mind constructs new character. The seeker, subtler, more evolved self, still character. Reading, meditating, comparing, judging progress, believing in destination. But realization isn't destination but destination absence. Progress idea. Collapse. No path exists. No distance. No other arrival place. You already embody what you seek. Truth needs no construction, perfection, earning, only recognition. Recognition happens now, never futureward. Future exists as mind invention. In recognition, everything simplifies. Search ends not through extraordinary achievement, but through seeing, never separation between being and seeking. The method-craving mind misunderstands, insisting something must happen. Deep-looking reveals that expectation ending must happen. The anchor, pure I am feeling. Not mental affirmation, but silent existence perception. Before name, story, ideas, simple existing fact. This fact transcends thoughts recognized in silence, revealing unshakable nature. This presence, I am, sweet, formless, limitless, more intimate than sensation. Before time. Truth reveals itself here, not happening but being. Everything else, emotions, thoughts, events, surface waves, being's depth remains, untouched, ever present, ever available. No practice leads here because any practice assumes outsider status. Already. Illusion. Forget all reading, study. Abandon everything. Release everything, surrender everything, not as negation but as burden dropping through recognizing needless carrying. Truth isn't knowledge but recognition that nothing requires knowing. Seeking ends. Seeker ends. In this ending emerges indescribable reality exceeding concepts. Complete silence remains, anxietyless, rushless, doubtless. The anxiety-doubt carrier vanishes. Life continues without tension. World moves without someone attempting capture. Being remains. Being doesn't desire. Fear seek, it simply is simple, motionless, complete. Now recognizing that nothing needs changing for freedom's presence. Nothing needs adding, correcting, conquering. Freedom isn't effort's consequence, but effort's cessation revelation. This stopping isn't stagnation but presence. Presence so alive it needs no complement. It already encompasses everything. Time loses significance, past loses importance. Future becomes irrelevant. Only now remains, not appointment clock now, but eternal now. The happening field that never moves. Truth forms not endpoint but constant experience background. Perceiving it represents not achievement but permission. Surrender, filter-free seeing without hurry or demand. Nothing remains to seek. This constitutes ultimate liberation. Faced with these exposures, conclusion imposes itself not as logical closure but inevitable surrender. Truth's simplicity exceeds mind's acceptance capacity. This shocks. This scandalized. Everything seemingly complex, profound, mystic, reserved, always remained available here now. No secret layers need deciphering. No cosmic gates need crossing. Only naked, silent being. This being needs no attainment, only recognition. Most resist precisely because of simplicity. Effortless, conquestless, evolutionless. It challenges everything taught, becoming better. Future perfection. Controlled dependent peace. One gesture dismantles everything. Abandon everything, including abandonment idea. The simplicity devastates ego, which requires complexity for survival. It needs drama, conflict, justifications. It needs conquest notions, improvement notions, protection notions. Ego feeds on separation illusion. When truth simplicity reveals itself, ego finds nowhere to hide, not through combat but through seeing. Only silence remains, not passive or dead silence but full, pulsating absolute silence. A silence beyond thought, explanation, practice. A silence that is. Words, emotions, events cannot affect it. It transcends understanding, more intimate than any self-concept. Language-bound mind approaches this mystery, naming it God, consciousness, being, love. No name suffices. No description reaches. The discovery exists pre-linguistically, before name, form, story. This before indicates not chronology, but existential priority. When everything quiets, what remains always was observing without involvement, effortlessly embracing, being without someone being. This state cannot be conquered because never lost, the experience background, the sprouting returning soil. Mind may call it emptiness while heart knows its fullness. Simplicity scandal, nothing remains to do, no ladder to climb, no spiritual battle to win, seeker vanishes. Search ends, raw silent clear reality remains, being's very nature. Nothing needs addition. Nothing needs explanation. Everything already exists here. This journey closes not with conclusion but invitation. Stop. Be quiet. Forget everything. Release everything, including release idea. Remain as presence you are. Observe developments. Don't believe. Don't resist, observe. Perhaps something silent and eternal. awakens not as novelty but as eternal identity. When stories cease, being reveals its formless, nameless, timeless face. Everything, nothing you, just remain silent. If this video touched something deep within you, if these words resonated in your heart, take the next recognition journey step. We've developed audio tools facilitating intimate, essential nature encounter. For more information and immediate access, click the on-screen link or check comments. If this truth exploration resonated, comment, "It made sense to me,"